Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. As Aaron Rodgers continues to look at different options, we update you on what the Steelers quarterback plans are and why there is a bigger picture here than just that. We talk about that, the Steelers' new defensive tackle they signed in free agency, and Mock Draft Monday here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans, we will get to the signing of the Patriots defensive tackle Daniel Ekuale in a bit. That's certainly news, and I do think that that's relevant to what the Steelers are trying to do, but we'll get to that. But we'd be remiss if we didn't immediately follow up on what the quarterback situation is, what we've seen, and the continued reports that are coming out. Now, if you haven't been keeping up, because it does get maddening trying to follow everything when it comes to this quarterback situation. The Mr. Krabs meme is just a literally everyday thing because it's just the next day there's something else. But there's continued reports that are coming out about multiple directions. And the bottom line here that I'm trying to tell you guys, nobody really knows what's actually going to happen. Why? Because a lot of this just still comes down to Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers appear to be waiting for Aaron Rodgers, just like the Giants appear to be waiting for Aaron Rodgers. But also now the Vikings are in this equation somehow. And there's also a report out there from The Athletic that Aaron Rodgers could really be waiting on just to see if he can just join the Vikings, and if the Vikings don't give him an offer that he wants, he will just retire. Whatever he decides at that point, who knows? This limbo is going to continue for however long teams let it, or he lets it, whatever. But this waiting period, this just makes me think that whatever salary the Steelers offered him isn't really that high or what he thinks he's worth. Otherwise, he would be going through with it probably right now. Now, there's the joke I've seen thrown out there that maybe Aaron Rodgers is just the ultimate life troll and he just wants to follow Brett Favre's teams because he went from the Packers to the Jets and now he wants to go to the Vikings. Maybe that who knows at this point with that guy. But to me, I think this more so just further affirms the point that myself, Alan Saunders, Nick Farabaugh, a lot of people who have come on this show that we talked to have been making on this show, on their shows, and on our written platforms. The Steelers aren't shooting for the sky or shooting for thinking that whoever they sign at quarterback in 2025 is their answer. We've said that time and time again, and I think people lose sight of that. And again, they shouldn't. Like, I think it's important to remember, not only was the consensus feel from reporters, analysts, scouts, national personalities, everyone at the end of this past regular season, when the season was over, said that, hey, the Steelers, they're not going to find their quarterback for the future of this offseason. Just get a bridge QB. You hope it's Justin Fields because he's a younger athletic option. And that was why people were even excited about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, because that's the crazy part about this. This time last year, when the Steelers signed Russell Wilson and traded for Justin Fields, there was the thought that, wait a second, the Steelers just cleared the board. They've reset, and this gives them an opportunity to have one of these quarterbacks. If they work out, they can be the bridge quarterback so that they don't have to draft a quarterback in 2025. Because this time last year, we had the sense that this year's quarterback crop was going to be bad. Like, I think that people forget that a year ago, like that's what the plan was. Right now is to not have to commit to a quarterback that would set you back in your plans of eventually finding that quarterback. And that's why people hope that Justin Fields or Russell Wilson could have lasted into this season, so that you weren't tied to that you didn't try to tie yourself to a quarterback in 2025 that would make you miss out on a potentially strong quarterback draft class in 2026. And I've seen this idea pushed that the Steelers don't know how to develop quarterbacks, and I don't think that that's necessarily the case, because if you're being honest, there's some of the things that I see thrown out there when they say, oh, they didn't develop Mitch Trubisky. Okay, who's developed Mitch Trubisky? Is that a thing? Well, he didn't develop Kenny Pickett. Well, he was 14-10 with them, and I agree. Like, he didn't work out, and he was a bad pick. He did have 7 game-winning drives. I feel like they got a lot out of him, but if you saw him in the couple of things that you saw him with the Eagles, it didn't look all that great. So it's not like the Eagles did something to raise him up really fast. But I'm not sure if Pickett, the problem is the development of Pickett or the picking of Pickett where they picked him. And then I even saw Mason Rudolph thrown out there, but I maintain that Mason Rudolph has probably played his best football when he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not probably, he has. You go look at what he did with the Titans. It was nothing like what he did with the Steelers. And he developed himself as a decent backup quarterback. And I think that that's something that the Steelers, deserve credit for. And he tried to prove that he was a starter somewhere else. He didn't. And that's why he's back. And also, when people said that, Mason Rudolph doesn't like the Steelers, he doesn't like Mike Tomlin, he thinks that they dissed him. Well, clearly not, because he came right back after a year away. And now it's Justin Fields, and people are trying to say, the Steelers didn't develop him at all, and he didn't get better with the organization. Meanwhile, this was the best completion percentage he's ever had, the best touchdown to interception ratio, the highest passer rating, and lowest sack percentages of his career, all top numbers there. And that's not to say that the Steelers did something amazing there. I'm just saying, I think that this is a mismade thing. The Steelers have taken one real swing at quarterback when it comes to trying to find their guy for the future, and that was drafting Kenny Pickett with a 20th overall pick back in 2022. Yeah, get my years right. But that was the one swing. And again, I don't think it's the development that was the problem. It was the pick that was the problem. Sure, the Steelers have now moved on from Pickett, and there's no doubting that about that situation. But none of these players that they've looked at have the value of what you think is going to be a big play for a quarterback in the NFL draft. Meaning, even Kenny Pickett, when he was the 20th overall pick, usually if you're getting a quarterback, you want him in the top 15, top 12 even, where you want to find your franchise quarterback. That's where you're finding the higher value guys, not the guys that fall down later and don't work out most of the time. You want to find those high value guys. And that's where next year there are some opportunities for that. And this year, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, I think, are the 2 quarterbacks that you can really look at and think, okay, they're that. But I think if you reach for a Jackson Dart or a Tyler Shuck or one of those guys in the first round, you are way overreaching the value there. I think those guys, I don't see those guys working out. I think that they end up in the same sort of vein as Kenny Pickett or Sam Howell or guys from that quarterback class. But next year, like some of the names, like if you've been paying attention, the big name that everyone always throws out is Arch Manning, and that's not me putting that down. I do think that if he's in that class, he's probably going to be the first overall pick. But there's also guys like Nico Iamaleava. I probably butchered that name, but he's the quarterback from Tennessee. Plays a lot like Jalen Hurts, but he's 6'5", has a cannon of an arm. I think he put some really good touch on passes. If he plays well again next year, he's probably going to the NFL draft. Lenore Sellers out of South Carolina, another option. Drew Aller out of Penn State, another option. I'm not a big Drew Aller guy, but I mean, there's 3 options there, even if you don't like Aller, that are going to be, I think, would be ahead of this class. And so GMs, the reason I bring those names up and the reason I look at that, remind you of that class and why that class, I think, is the ultimate plan here. Because GMs, general managers, they often have their guy that they're planning for to make their move and to put their name behind it. And if you're Omar Khan, I think that's what he's ultimately waiting for. That's what the big play that he's looking to make right now. Because remember, Kenny Pickett wasn't his pick. That was Kevin Colbert's pick. So Omar Khan, I think, is trying to set up the opportunity for him to make his GM move that finds the next franchise quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because that's what Kevin Colbert did with Ben Roethlisberger. And granted, there's a story that Dan Rooney came in and made them pick it, but still, that pick goes behind Kevin Colbert's resume. It's a big reason why he's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer. It's a big reason why the Steelers became a powerhouse in the 2000s, was going and getting the right quarterback there. But I think that's another reason why they're being very cautious with the moves right now, because they're not trying to get tangled up in a situation that causes you to not be in a prime position to make moves and trade up and get the QB that you're actually targeting. Because I truly think what's happening is Omar Khan and his front office, and they probably have 2 or 3 guys, or maybe even just 1 or 2 guys in this next draft class. They're saying, hey, if this guy comes available, this is it. This is the guy we really want. And that always fluctuates, right? Like if you talk to people in the front office, you ever get a chance to do that, what you think one day may not be the thing the next. But when you're studying a guy and you're thinking, hey, this could be the guy, you keep close tabs on him. And if they work out, you want to be ready to make sure that guy is your quarterback in the near future. So I think I think that's the ultimate plan here, is that people got to remember whatever you thought, people are saying, oh, the Steelers have bungled this entire quarterback situation. I think the only way you can say that is if you really believe that Justin Fields was the franchise quarterback and that they should have shelled out all the money that they could have to make sure that he came to them and didn't go to the Jets. As I said it, as Nick said it, as Alan said it, as a lot of people have said it when we talked about this situation, the Steelers did not view Justin Fields that way. They offered him what I think it was a $15 million a year contract, which, by the way, was what we said they should offer in this leading up to that situation. And they gave him that offer, and he didn't want it because he took a $20 million a year deal from the New York Jets. And that's his business. Football is a business. You go and make your money. But I think that the thing is that the Steelers, whatever quarterback situation they have this year, they want to have it to be competitive. They don't want to not be a competitive team. That's not how the Steelers work. But they do want to make sure that whatever they do not mess up the opportunity so that this front office could go out and make its stake and make its claim and say, hey, this is the quarterback that we think is going to best fit this team and best fit the future of the NFL and be the ultimate piece that gets the Steelers back to being Super Bowl contenders sooner rather than later. And when that gets made, that's when Omar Khan's legacy, I think, will really be on the line, just like Kevin Colbert's was when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger and he was able to work out. That's why you're not seeing an urgency to make a move that ties them to a serious quarterback situation, because quarterbacks, they want security like any player does. And so you got to be careful about what you're offering there and, what the picture you're painting. And if you're a quarterback and you know that the Steelers, if you're sitting down with the Steelers and you're asking, hey, so like, am I going to be here 2 years, 3 years? I want to have security here. And you say, well, no, actually, we're planning on drafting a guy, next year that could be the guy. Quarterbacks might not feel like this is the place for them. I think that's what's going on here. And I think that's the plot that people should not lose when talking about how the Steelers are handling their quarterback search for 2025. And granted, I still think they should do whatever they can to just get Russell Wilson in the door. And I'm not saying whatever they can. I think it should be that $15 to $20 million range that I've been saying all along. Pay him, come back, be a veteran, hold it down, and be the bridge quarterback. I think Mason's a good backup for him. That could be your situation. You have those two guys carrying into next year. You draft your rookie, and then you go from there. But that's why I think that Aaron Rodgers, the reason he hasn't decided is because the Steelers aren't trying to give him all the money that he thinks it is, if it's the Mike Florio $45 million a year contract that he suggested that Aaron Rodgers really wants. So again, I urge Steelers fans, do not lose the plot in this quarterback search, because the plot is not this year. I do believe it is next year in this with that upcoming draft class and the players that look like they're going to be available. So we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I do want to talk about an actual new Steeler that is on the roster. Well, will be on the roster this week because the Steelers have reportedly signed him. That's Daniel Ekuale, defensive tackle, and how that addresses the defensive line. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you that this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can take all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start actually building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. We're also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. That's 200 extra bucks that you can use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets at the end of March Madness. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. And remember, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com to get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here as we go through topics. Now, I talked about, what we're going to do here for the quarterback situation. We had to address it, but I do think we got to address the new signing, and that was because I was going to take some calls on this show, but when I saw there was a new signing, I had to delve into some film. Now, that caused this show to go up a lot later than I expected, but I didn't want to be talking without actual perspective on this guy. So I watched about, I'd say, a few games of this player, Daniel Ekuale, the defensive tackle that the Steelers signed on Sunday, and I'm interested. I was interested in seeing what kind of addition this is and what kind of a piece here. So first, let's just talk about the plain facts of who he is. He was a player. He played the last 4 years for the New England Patriots. He's 31 years old, so he's a solid veteran coming in with plenty of experience. He was an undrafted free agent in the 2018 NFL draft. He was initially signed by the Browns, played for the Jaguars, and then he found his way to the Patriots, where he played for the last 4 years. I spent a time studying his tape and just going over a few of his games, and I got a sense that, okay, first of all, let's get this out of the way. He's not a new star player. This isn't like getting Milton Williams or Tershawn Wharton or any of the big names that we thought the Steelers might try to chase down for defensive tackle this upcoming year. But he's also, I think, a solid rotational piece for the Steelers moving forward. Now, again, I don't think that this dissuades the Steelers and the plan that I think that they've been on for them to go get a defensive tackle in the first round this year. This gives them another rotational piece that we said that the Steelers did need to make sure that they have a stronger rotation for their defensive line. Now, if you look at what Daniel Ekuale did last year was actually the first time he started pretty much a full season. He had 16 starts on the season. The most starts he had in his career in a single year in his career for that was 5 starts at one point. So this was his, I guess, a show that he was able to rise up the Patriots ranks, become a solid veteran, and get that playing time. But when I watched him, I did get a better sense of how he played. And there were things that I did like on tape. For one, I love the way that he uses his hands. So many times, so many reps that I see this guy, he uses his hands, he engages and gets his hands inside of offensive linemen, and that's how he keeps himself from being blown up by offensive linemen, maintains his point of leverage, and is able to kind of win his spots on the defensive line, which is something the Steelers desperately need, especially of their defensive line coming off the bench with fresh legs to keep things going and to keep teams from just running the ball on them, like what was happening in that Ravens playoff game down the stretch. For another, when he uses his hands, he's using them to reestablish leverage throughout the play. Like, it's not just the initial strike, because often what happens is guys will just strike with their hands and hold them there, and when they're holding them and they don't readjust, and they don't, that allows offensive linemen to kind of counter that initial strike, figure out ways around them. But that's not something that I see Daniel Ekuale just settle with. When he's fighting throughout a play, he will reestablish, he will keep hitting you with his hands, he'll keep working his legs to kind of find that leverage point, and and read the play and then attack, so that if the run's coming his direction, he's going to be able to adjust, get off your block, shed you, and find a way to help bring down the tackler. I also saw him show saw a solid ability to play out of the 3 technique, which is kind of where I think the Steelers are looking for a guy right now. Again, I still think that if you're getting a guy this year in this year's draft, you want a guy that can either play nose 3 technique or just be like that overall guy like Cam Hayward. We've talked about, like Derek Harmon being that guy, or Kenneth Grant being that nose guy, so that Keanu Benton can bump out to being a more 3 technique type of defensive tackle, so that he doesn't have to play the nose. So I like the way that Ekuale played in the 3 technique spot. I thought there were some really good reps that I was able to see where he was double teamed and taken on double teams. And sometimes he didn't win, but there were sometimes I thought he did a really solid job making sure that he was able to anchor himself, use his size, and be able to use his hands to kind of make sure that he wasn't getting blown off the ball. And then eventually, when one of the linemen chipped off to the second level to get a linebacker, he was able to fight through the guy that was still blocking him and still make a play. And that's something that I think is huge, because that's one thing that I think really crushed the Steelers, especially down the stretch last season, was when teams were doing double teams at certain points. Their interior defensive linemen were getting destroyed. And I think that was something Keanu Benton struggled with. I think Cam Hayward, he always has handled that pretty solidly. But that's something that you need people in your rotation to be able to handle well. And, I didn't watch every Ekuale game ever. I watched a few games here and there to get a sense so I could talk about it on this show and have a good sense of what I'm talking about here. And I think that that's the best trait that I see from Ekuale is his technique, his use of hands, his veteran savvy to be able to counter when offenses are trying to make life harder for him or blow him spot up on the defensive line and knock him back into the linebackers and then kind of eliminate his spot in the defensive line so that they can run the ball. Now, I will say this. He's not the most proficient pass rusher. He had 1 sack in his last 2 seasons. I think he had 9 pressures last year. He's not going to be I think he's not going to be fighting through all the blocks all the time to create mass pressure in the backfield on third downs if he's rotated in. But I do think, again, there's different roles for guys, right? And I think there's a potential for. It's funny. I did a mock draft episode for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette this past weekend with Adam Bittner, and one thing that Adam asked me, and I think this is a very reasonable question, was, is it should the Steelers be going for in the first round of the draft this year? He's asked, should the Steelers be going for a defensive tackle that is primarily a run stuffer or primarily a pass rusher? And my answer was they should be going for both, a guy that could do both. That's why you go for a guy like that in the first round. And I think Kenneth Grant and Derek Harmon are 2 primary guys that can be those types of options for the Steelers. But if you're going for guys in the 3rd and 4th round or signing free agents on the second week of free agency who aren't getting major contracts, and I haven't seen the numbers for Ekuale, but if you're getting guys like that, those are the guys that are going to specialize in either being a pass rusher or a run stuffer. And to me, at least just from what I've seen, I think Ekuale is more of the run stuffing variety, which is what this team needs right now. They need guys that can help there to give Cam Hayward a breather without putting someone out there that's going to get destroyed and let teams run all over them. And also find a way to keep the linebackers clean, because that's a big part of stuffing the run, is making sure the linebackers don't get stuffed. You can go back to Ray Lewis when they lost Tony Siragusa and Sam Adams in the middle of the defensive line. He said those guys were huge. They kept him clean, and then they had the Ravens had to go and find Haloti Ngata to bring back that defensive line presence so that Ray Lewis could be a prime linebacker. You look at Jack Lambert of the 70s, Steel Curtain. That was whereas they were a dominant force. A big thing that they did was they kept him and Jack Ham clean. It's the same thing here. Casey Hampton, what did he do so well? He kept James Ferrier, Larry Foote, Lawrence Timmons clean. That's something I think these Steelers defensive linemen, they need more guys that can help with that. And I think Ekuale can be a rotational piece for that. He's not a bona fide starter. I think he can start in a pinch or two if you want Steelers, but if you want a dominant defensive line, you could still invest a 1st-round pick, have Cam Hayward, have Keanu Benton, and say, hey, that's a good 3 guys in the front of that rotation. But Ekuale could be a solid rotational guy to come in and back up one of those guys, give them a breather, and then not lose a whole lot in the run defense department. That's why I think the Steelers are signing him. Just me. I still got to do more film work on him just to get a better sense of who he is, because I can't say I studied him in particular, in the past few years. But in the film study I was able to do before this show, I do get the sense that that's what he is. So could he work around some things and be an important piece for the Steelers? We will see. But that's who the Steelers got in free agency. It's another signing there. We'll see what other move. We'll see the money that comes with it and the other moves that the Steelers have to consider moving forward as far as how other ways they want to bolster this roster. So the key will be deciding where he fits, again, with Hayward, Benton, and company to deploy him the most. But that also means including whoever they get in the draft, which I do think they are going to go after someone in the high up in the draft at defensive line to further bolster this group and to be a pillar piece moving forward for whoever sticks around. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's Mock Draft Monday time. We talk about who won with their setup picks. We discuss those picks right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, everyone, back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. As usual, it's Monday, which means it's Mock Draft Monday. So we're going to get into that. Everyone loves our Mock Draft Monday segment. Each week, I post to either my Twitter, Blue Sky, or Locked On Steelers Facebook group for you all to post your mock draft screenshots to get your chance to get them on the show. But this week, I did apply a rule. I've been applying very minimal rules so far, nothing too crazy. I was like, hey, no trades, no this, no that. This was my first week where I was like, I'm going to demand that you make a specific type of trade. And I'm going to explain why in a bit. But I demanded the rule for this one was that you must trade back in the first round. The Steelers moved to get DK Metcalf from the Seahawks, which means they lost their second round pick and leaves them with just one pick on the second day of the NFL draft. The second day of the NFL draft, of course, has the second and third rounds. The Steelers might not be able to recoup a second round pick with a trade just by trading back in the first round, but they could pick up maybe a third rounder and some change. So I went with someone who was able to pull that off. And without further ado, congratulations to this week's winner, Joe from Twitter at @_JM711. Joe, thank you for your picks here. You kind of hit on a lot of the big things that were here. If you're looking on screen on YouTube, you can see a lot of his picks here. I'll run through them for our listeners to get them as well. So Joe traded back 5 spots to move back to the 26th overall pick with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, there's some simulators that'll let you do that, and like you'll get a second round pick. I'm not so sure that 5 picks in the first round nets you a second round pick unless you offer up some other things. But it did get Joe in this situation the Rams' third round pick at 101 and their 6th round pick at 195. I think that's a reasonable haul, especially if the Rams are trying to be aggressive and go get somebody. So solid move there. And I like that. So let's go into who Joe actually picked here and why I went with his draft. Now, 26th, he stays with the plan, the ultimate plan that I think is the key here, and he goes with Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. As I've said, Derek Harmon has the size of Cam Hayward. He looks up to Cam Hayward. He studies Cam Hayward. He has the talent to make big plays. He can be a pass rusher and a run stuffer. I have him as my number 3 defensive lineman in this class behind Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, the Michigan boys. So if Harmon's there, I think that's a very good pick in my eyes. And more and more I just look at other big boards and how other people are assembling them. And it seems like Harmon is becoming more of a higher up guy as far as in the defensive line class. But I think before he was like the 4th or 5th guy. Now he's like maybe the 4th or 3rd guy. But it also seems like a lot of people are having him being in the lower half or the lower 3rd, or maybe even lower 4th of the first round. So if the Steelers see him at 21, I think there's a theory out there right now that if they waited, they could still get him. And if you can recoup another pick to help you make more picks in this draft class, then why not? And so if Harmon's there, very good pick in my eyes. And Joe was able to get Harmon and trade back and get extra picks. Now, Joe used the Steelers' natural 3rd round pick on running back Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, who I think is a solid, hard running back. We showed clips of us talking to him at the combine when that happened in Indianapolis, and that I think he's a solid addition there. He could play as the number 2 guy behind Jaylen Warren, learn from him, and then eventually become the number 1 guy if he turns out to be that guy. I think that's a very solid pick in the 3rd round. I'm not sure if he gets to the 3rd round, but granted, he did run a 4.57 in the 40-yard dash, so maybe we want to step back because this is a deep running back class. But either way, solid pick there in the 3rd round. Then with the extra 3rd round pick that Joe got from the Rams, he went after Jalen Royals out of Utah State, wide receiver. He's a possession receiver. I think he could be a good option to help you win in the middle part of the field. He's not going to be a game changer, but then again, you got your game changer in DK Metcalf. If you're not trading away George Pickens, that's another one. So get a guy that can help you win where they're not, and that's a guy that maybe could line up, make some possession receiving catches over the middle and give you some presence there, and battle out with Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson for the future options there. So solid pick there. After Royals, Joe had the Steelers taking Will Howard in the 4th round. That's been my sweet spot for if the Steelers go get a quarterback. It should be the 4th round, started day 3, and I really like Will Howard out of Ohio State. I think he's another Mason Rudolph type where he has a good arm. He can fit it what you want. He's probably not going to be a future starter, but you can get a young quarterback in the room and at least see what you can do with him moving forward. Then you get Kobe Bryant, the cornerback out of Kansas, Caleb Rogers, an interior offensive lineman, Cam Jackson, defensive lineman out of Florida, and Jalen Travis, an offensive tackle of Iowa State in the 7th round. Now, all those picks adding up, I think this addresses several of the things the Steelers could use to hit at if they get it right. For example, Kobe Bryant at cornerback. You're not spending high on this cornerback class because you're looking at maybe Darius Slay is going to start this year. Joey Porter is going to start this year. But Kobe Bryant gives you an option to say, hey, you know what? That could be a developmental piece for if Corey Trice doesn't work out, because again, I think that's where the Steelers, I think they have some confidence that Corey Trice could work out. But if he doesn't, you have another cornerback now in the pipeline who can help your secondary in the coming years. Then I do think the Steelers should get an interior offensive lineman that's younger as well. Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech qualifies there. And then even if you think that that Ekuale is going to solidify your defensive line ranks, getting one late can't hurt in the 7th round. That's what they did with Cam Jackson here. Joe did, and then Jalen Travis, an offensive tackle in the 7th round. The Steelers could use a backup offensive tackle to help replenish those ranks there. So I don't have any problem with those picks whatsoever. But I think that's a solid slate of picks. And again, the reason I picked it is because I think it addresses a lot of the Steelers' real needs. And you look at D-line, running back, wide receiver, check, all in the first three picks there, and then addresses some of the other needs the Steelers have with those day 3 picks. I think all of that is a solid pace, and trading back to get that extra day 2 pick made it possible, which is why I wanted to do that exercise with y'all. And I think everyone who participates, because y'all gave me a lot of really good drafts with this and a lot of good ideas with the trade backs to get your options there. So congratulations again to Joe for winning Mock Draft Monday. And be sure to tune in every Monday and look at my social media profiles in the weekends leading up to Monday to have your chance to enter your picks to get on the show. And we went with Joe because he played by the rules, traded back, made some reasonable decisions, and got that DT early, which I do think is the priority there. So with that, then congrats, Joe. And with that, thank you for watching or listening to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same place everywhere, at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. I believe I have a Darius Slay film study that should have published this morning if you're watching this Monday. So go check that out as far as why I think he's a man coverage upgrade over Dante Jackson, but does have some holdbacks there. So you can check out my film study there. We'll probably talk about that more on the Tuesday episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember to watch this show on YouTube. Subscribe here to get all our Monday through Friday episodes, as well as on your favorite podcasting apps where we have our episodes Monday through Friday, including bonus content whenever we have big news to talk about or extra things that happen during the weekend. So thanks again for tuning in to Locked On Steelers. I'm your host, Chris Carter. I'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.